Imagine this paradox. We live in the most technologically advanced era humanity has ever known. Satellites beam real-time images of hurricanes from space, algorithms predict our shopping habits before we're even aware of them, and robots now perform surgeries with more precision than the most experienced surgeons of a century ago. Yet, despite all this advancement, billions of people still go to bed hungry. Children are born into poverty that could be solved with the wealth currently spent on vanity projects. We've split the atom, walked on the moon, mapped the human genome, and still we struggle to solve the most basic equation of all: how to share kindness, dignity, and opportunity on a planet that is perfectly capable of providing for us all. That paradox should make us pause, because what does it say about a civilization that can build a telescope capable of peering 13 billion years into the past, but still fails to guarantee clean water for every child alive today? What does it say about a species clever enough to decode the faint whispers of cosmic microwave background? Radiation, the literal afterglow of creation itself, yet still argues endlessly over tribal lines drawn in the sand. It is as though we have one foot planted firmly among the stars and the other trapped in the mud of our oldest instincts. Now, let me ask you a question that has no easy answer. What if we could see beyond the edge of the universe? Not just in a literal sense, but metaphorically, in the way we live and think. What if we could peer beyond the horizon of our limitations, the event horizon of our own fears and insecurities, and glimpse a vision of what humanity might become if we truly embraced the cosmic perspective? To ask this question is to confront both science and philosophy at once. Science tells us that the observable universe, the grandest stage upon which all matter, energy, and time dance, is finite. Not small by any means, but finite in what we can measure. Beyond that cosmic boundary, beyond that faint edge where light has simply not had enough time to reach us, lies the great unknown. Philosophy asks us, do we dare to look? Do we dare to imagine what lies beyond, not only in the cosmos, but within ourselves? Because here's the truth. The greatest barrier to seeing beyond the edge of the universe is not technological. It is not the lack of a telescope large enough, nor spacecraft fast enough. The barrier is psychological. It is cultural. It is the limitations we impose on our imagination when we decide that what we currently know must define the limits of what is possible. Consider history. For most of human existence, the horizon itself was the edge of the universe. To early seafarers, the ocean's line against the sky was the boundary between the known and the unknowable. And yet, one day, someone dared to cross it. The Earth was once believed to be flat, not because people lacked intelligence, but because they lacked the evidence, the vision, and the courage to think otherwise. And now, with photographs taken by astronauts orbiting the moon, we see Earth for what it is: a blue marble, fragile, suspended in cosmic darkness. That simple image shifted culture, politics, and even philosophy. Because when you see Earth from space, there are no borders, no tribes, no divisions, just one world. This is why the question, what if we could see beyond the edge of the universe, is not just about physics, it is about morality. Because to see beyond is to challenge the invisible walls we build in our minds, the prejudices we inherit, the fears we never interrogate, and the divisions we allow to persist. It is about cultivating the courage to imagine that the future can be different, and that our small lives are threads in a much greater cosmic tapestry. Think about this. The universe is 8 billion years old. Humanity, in its current form, is only about 300,000 years old. That means if the history of the universe were compressed into a single calendar year, the entire span of human existence would take place in the last 37 minutes of December 31st. And yet, in those 37 minutes, we've learned to shape fire, build cities, compose symphonies, and launch spacecraft to the outer planets. We've discovered black holes, decoded DNA, invented democracy, and created art that outlives its creators. That is not trivial. That is extraordinary. And it begs the question, what might we accomplish in the next 37 minutes? But here is the sobering counterpoint. Within that same 37 minutes, we have also waged wars of unimaginable scale, unleashed weapons capable of erasing ourselves from history, polluted the very air we breathe, and destabilized the climate of the only planet we know that can sustain us. We have achieved both greatness and folly on a scale so vast that if an alien civilization were watching from afar, they might wonder whether we are a young species still fumbling in the dark, or a tragic species destined to extinguish itself before reaching maturity. This duality is the paradox of humanity. We are brilliant, yet reckless. We are compassionate, yet cruel. We are capable of contemplating the birth of galaxies while simultaneously arguing over matters so trivial they would not even register on the cosmic scale. And so the great question becomes, will we use our cosmic perspective to transcend our divisions, or will we remain blind to the larger truth of our place in the universe? When you gaze at the night sky, you are not just looking at stars, you are looking at history. The light from those stars has traveled across space for thousands, millions, sometimes billions of years just to enter your eye. That means that every time you look up, you are literally seeing into the past. The star Vega, bright in the summer sky, shines at us from 25 light years away. The light you see tonight left Vega in the year 1999, when perhaps you were just a child, when entire nations had different leaders, when the internet was still young. Look farther, and you may see light that left its source before Earth even existed. To look at the stars is to travel through time. And so I ask, what if we applied that same perspective inward? What if we could look back across the timeline of humanity with the same clarity? Would we see not just wars and conquests, but also cooperation, compassion, and progress? Would we see that for every tyrant who burned books, there were scribes who preserved knowledge? For every empire that rose and fell, there were dreamers who looked up and wondered what lay beyond the sky. Because the story of humanity is not just the story of conflict, it is also the story of curiosity. It is curiosity that led us from caves to cathedrals, from sundials to space stations. It is curiosity that compels us to ask questions not because they are useful, but because they are profound. Why are we here? Are we alone? What lies beyond the edge of the universe? And here's the astonishing thing. Every time we've dared to ask those questions, we've discovered that the universe is bigger, stranger, and more wondrous than we ever imagined. We thought Earth was the center of all things. We discovered it is one planet orbiting one star among 400 billion in one galaxy, among 2 trillion. We thought the universe was eternal and unchanging. We discovered it had a beginning, a moment when time itself came into existence. We thought matter was solid and indivisible. We discovered it is made of atoms, themselves made of quarks, held together by forces that we are still struggling to fully understand. And each time we've pushed against the boundary of our knowledge, the universe has rewarded us with a greater view. So perhaps the real question is not, what if we could see beyond the edge of the universe? But what if we could see beyond the edge of ourselves? What if we could apply the same curiosity, the same hunger for discovery to our own limitations? What if we could extend empathy as far as we extend science? What if our moral imagination expanded as rapidly as our technological capacity? Because the universe is not holding us back, we are holding ourselves back. But let's not romanticize too quickly, because to see beyond ourselves also means facing uncomfortable truths. We are not the masters of the universe we once believed ourselves to be. We are not perched at the pinnacle of creation, separate from nature, but woven into it. The same carbon atoms that build our bodies were forged in the hearts of stars. The iron in our blood once resided in the core of a supernova. The calcium in our bones, the oxygen in our lungs, the silicon on our technologies, all of it is recycled stardust. To recognize this is humbling, and humility is not always an easy pill to swallow for species that build skyscrapers to scrape the sky and rockets to pierce it. And yet, humility is perhaps the most liberating perspective of all. Because when you see yourself as stardust, you cannot help but recognize that your neighbor is stardust too. That every enemy you've ever had, every stranger you've ever ignored, every friend you've ever loved, all of them share the same cosmic origin. Suddenly, the categories that divide us, nation, religion, race, ideology, begin to pale in comparison to the fundamental fact that we are all temporary arrangements of atoms assembled by physics, animated by chemistry, awakened by consciousness, and destined to dissolve back into the cosmos. Now, this does not make our struggles meaningless. Quite the opposite. It makes them precious, because meaning is not given by the universe, it is created by us. The stars do not care whether humanity thrives or collapses. Galaxies will continue their cosmic ballet, black holes will continue to warp space and time, and dark energy will continue to push the fabric of the universe apart, with or without us. The universe is indifferent to our fate. And that is precisely why it is up to us to care. Think about that responsibility. We are the only species, so far as we know, capable of reflecting on its own existence. The only species that can ask, what if? The only species that can build not just tools, but civilizations, philosophies, art, and science. We are the cosmos made self-aware, and yet too often we squander that awareness. We use it to build weapons instead of bridges, to hoard wealth instead of share resources, to sow division instead of nurture understanding. But if we could see beyond the edge of the universe, beyond our own narrow vision, perhaps we would understand that our survival, our flourishing, is not guaranteed. The dinosaurs ruled Earth for 160 million years, and all it took was one asteroid 6 miles wide to end their reign in an instant. Humanity has been around for a mere fraction of that time. Do we dare assume we are immune to such fate? Or do we take the lesson seriously that survival is not a given, that nature is not sentimental, and that only foresight, cooperation, and wisdom can extend our story? Here is where science becomes not just a tool of discovery, but a mirror for morality. The edge of the universe is not just a boundary of light. It is a metaphor for the boundaries of our thinking. Every great scientific leap in history required breaking through a conceptual edge. Newton shattered the edge of classical motion by revealing the mathematics of gravity. Darwin shattered the edge of static creation by revealing evolution. Einstein shattered the edge of absolute time by showing us relativity. Each breakthrough required looking where no one else dared to look, asking questions no one else thought to ask. So I return to my earlier challenge. What if we could see beyond the edge of ourselves? What breakthroughs might we achieve, not just in science, but in how we live together? Could we design economies that reward sustainability instead of exploitation? Could we build technologies that elevate humanity rather than addict it? Could we shape cultures that prioritize cooperation over competition? These are not utopian fantasies. They are possibilities awaiting our courage. Let's consider one of humanity's greatest case studies, the space race. At the height of the Cold War, the world was on the brink of nuclear annihilation. Two superpowers, locked in a dangerous rivalry, poured resources into weapons capable of erasing life on Earth many times over. And yet, from that same rivalry came one of humanity's most unifying achievements, landing on the moon. In the midst of fear, suspicion, and division, we launched a spacecraft not to conquer another nation, but to extend the frontier of human possibility. And when Neil Armstrong set foot on the lunar surface, he didn't plant a flag of conquest, he spoke words of unity. For all mankind. The Apollo missions remind us of something profound, that even in times of division, we can create moments of transcendence. And if we could do it, then at the height of fear and hostility, what might we achieve today if we applied that same spirit of exploration, not for competition, but for collaboration? Of course, cynics will argue that space exploration is a luxury, a distraction from the problems we face here on Earth. But I argue the opposite. To look outward is to gain perspective inward. The very technologies developed for space travel, communication satellites, weather forecasting, GPS have transformed life on Earth in ways that address hunger, disaster relief, and global connection. But beyond the technology, the greater gift of space exploration is perspective. To see Earth from orbit is to see how fragile our planet is. Astronauts describe the overview effect, a sudden realization that national boundaries mean nothing from space, that Earth is one interconnected system, and that the fate of each of us is tied to the fate of all. So let's expand the metaphor one step further. If space travel gave us the overview effect for our planet, what would it mean to have an overview effect for the universe? To look not just beyond Earth, but beyond the cosmic horizon? To imagine not just where we are, but where we might go? Would we still cling to petty divisions? Or would we finally embrace the truth that humanity is one family, traveling together through an indifferent cosmos? And perhaps the real paradox is this: the further we look outward, the more we are called inward. The more we study the stars, the more urgent becomes the question of how we treat one another here on Earth. Because telescopes can show us galaxies, but they cannot tell us how to share compassion. Physics can reveal the structure of space-time, but it cannot dictate how we organize societies. That responsibility falls on us, and it is, in many ways, the greatest responsibility we will ever hold. So I ask you again, what if we could see beyond the edge of the universe? Would we finally see ourselves clearly? Let's pause and consider something astonishing. We are the only species, as far as we know, that can know that we know. A whale may sing across an ocean, an ant may coordinate with thousands of its kin, and a bird may navigate across continents with precision beyond our maps. But as remarkable as these abilities are, no other creature we've observed looks up at the night sky and asks, "What is all this? What does it mean?" That act of questioning is uniquely human. And yet, paradoxically, it is also the source of both our greatest achievements and our deepest divisions. For every question that leads to a scientific breakthrough, there's another question that fractures societies. Who belongs? Who decides? Who deserves? The same mind that builds a telescope to gaze into galaxies can also build walls to divide neighbors. Why does this matter? Because to see beyond the edge of the universe, even metaphorically, requires more than instruments. It requires courage, the courage to look at ourselves with honesty, the courage to accept that progress without wisdom can be dangerous, the courage to admit that for all our advancements, we remain a young species fumbling through adolescence. Consider this. If the Earth were scaled down to a single calendar year, with January 1st as its birth 4.5 billion years ago, then modern humans would not appear until 11:52 p.m. on December 31st. In other words, our entire written history, all of civilization, from the pyramids of Egypt to the algorithms of Silicon Valley, fits within the last 8 minutes of that cosmic year. 8 minutes, and already in those 8 minutes, we've created beauty and horror in equal measure. We've painted the Sistine Chapel and built Auschwitz. We've written symphonies and dropped atomic bombs. We've walked on the moon and burned our forests. 8 minutes into our story, and the jury is still out on how the next chapters will be written. And yet, in this fragile infancy, we have glimpsed wonders. We've peered into galaxies billions of light years away. We've measured the afterglow of the Big Bang, a whisper from the dawn of time. We've detected gravitational waves rippling across the universe, caused by black holes colliding in a cosmic dance that began long before humans even existed. We've landed robots on Mars, flown probes past Pluto, and sent spacecraft beyond the boundary of our solar system into interstellar space, carrying with them golden records inscribed with music, greetings, and images of humanity, just in case someone or something finds them. Think about that for a moment. At a time when many of us struggle to agree on the simplest truths here on Earth, we've already sent messages to the stars. It is at once inspiring and ironic, noble and naive. For while we argue over language, borders, and resources, the Voyager spacecraft drifts silently through the void, carrying with it the sounds of whales, the laughter of children, and the music of Bach. A time capsule of who we were when we first dared to imagine our voice might carry beyond our world. And here's the haunting question. If some distant civilization were to find that record, would they judge us by the beauty we preserved or the brutality we enacted? Would they see us as a young species worth knowing, or a self-destructive species that could not survive its own adolescence? This is where perspective matters, because science is not just about knowing, it is about seeing ourselves in context. When Copernicus discovered that Earth orbits the sun, he didn't just change astronomy, he shattered the illusion of human centrality. When Darwin revealed evolution, he didn't just change biology, he redefined our place in the tapestry of life. When Edwin Hubble proved that galaxies are racing away from us, he didn't just change cosmology, he showed us that the universe itself is expanding, that creation is ongoing, and that we are part of a much larger story. Each discovery has been a blow to human arrogance, and yet, paradoxically, each has also expanded human dignity. Because dignity does not come from being the center of the universe. It comes from recognizing that we are part of it, that our atoms are connected to stars, our history to Earth, and our destiny to choices we have not yet made. Now, let me ask a difficult question. If we could see beyond the edge of the universe, if we could step outside the boundaries of our current imagination, would we continue to act as though our problems are insurmountable? Would we still spend trillions on weapons while millions starve? Would we still cling to ancient hatreds in a universe that is billions of years old? Would we still define ourselves by the smallest differences when the cosmos is telling us loudly and clearly that we are one? Because here is the irony. The universe has already shown us the truth we pretend not to see. The atmosphere doesn't stop at political borders. The oceans don't recognize flags. Viruses don't carry passports. Climate doesn't ask whether you are rich or poor. In the grand system of Earth, we rise or fall together. And if we cannot grasp that truth here, under the thin veil of sky that shelters us, what hope do we have of one day thriving among the stars? Yet I am not pessimistic, because history also shows us that humanity, when pressed, is capable of transformation. We abolished slavery, though it had once seemed inseparable from civilization. We extended rights to women, though many once believed equality was impossible. We are slowly, imperfectly extending dignity across lines of race, gender, and orientation. Progress is not linear, but it is real. And each step forward has required people willing to see beyond the edge of their time, to imagine what others could not, and to act on that vision. So perhaps the question is not whether we can see beyond the edge of the universe, but whether we can train ourselves to look, to see the unseen, to recognize that every problem we face is not a fixed reality, but a horizon waiting to be crossed. Hunger is not inevitable. Poverty is not inevitable. Violence is not inevitable. These are not laws of physics. They are failures of imagination, failures of courage. And just as sailors once crossed the ocean, just as astronomers once looked beyond the stars, we too must dare to imagine a horizon beyond our current limits. Because if the universe has taught us anything, it is that reality is always larger than we think. Always stranger, always more wondrous. And the edge of knowledge is not a wall, it is a doorway. So I return to you, to us, with this challenge. If you could see beyond the edge of the universe, what would you do differently today? Black holes. They are perhaps the most mysterious objects in the universe. Regions of space where gravity's collapsed matter so completely that not even light can escape. They are born when stars many times more massive than our sun die in cataclysmic supernovae, leaving behind a core so dense that the very fabric of space-time caves in on itself. To approach a black hole is to approach the edge of physics as we know it. The equations break down, time slows to a crawl, cause and effect blur into uncertainty, and yet, black holes are not just cosmic monsters, they are also teachers. They remind us that even in destruction, there is creation. The very forces that tear apart stars also shape galaxies. The supermassive black hole at the center of our Milky Way anchors the gravitational ballet of hundreds of billions of stars. Without it, our galaxy might not exist as we know it. Black holes reveal that the boundaries we fear most may also be the very structures that give the universe order. Now, what if we turn that lesson inward? Humanity, too, faces its black holes not of gravity, but of behavior. Poverty so deep that entire generations cannot escape its pull. Hatred so entrenched it consumes empathy before it can escape. Greed so powerful it warps the flow of justice around it. These two are singularities in our moral universe. And just as black holes bend light, these human black holes bend truth. They distort reality until what is harmful appears inevitable, until injustice appears natural, until cruelty becomes invisible. But here's the insight. Black holes are not infinite prisons. Physics tells us that even black holes emit radiation, slowly evaporating across eons. They do not last forever, and neither must our human black holes. Injustice is not eternal. Hatred is not eternal. Violence is not eternal. They, too, can evaporate if we have the courage to look them in the eye and recognize them for what they are. Collapses of imagination, collapses of compassion, collapses of responsibility. And speaking of responsibility, let us consider time. Because if black holes are the graveyards of stars, time is the great river that carries us all. Time is relentless. It moves forward without pause, without sympathy, without second chances. The Earth will orbit the sun whether we learn from our mistakes or not. The sun itself will one day exhaust its fuel, swelling into a red giant, swallowing Mercury and Venus, scorching Earth. Long before that, our civilization will either have perished or transcended. When you understand time at the cosmic scale, a strange thing happens. You realize how brief our moment truly is. The universe has existed for 13.8 billion years. The sun has shined for 4.6 billion. Human civilization, with its libraries and skyscrapers, spans barely 6,000 years. Your own life, 80 or 90 years, if you are fortunate, is less than a blink of a cosmic eye. And yet, within that blink, everything you are, everything you love, everything you create takes place. So the question becomes, how will you spend your blink? Will you use it to hoard, to divide, to fear? Or will you use it to build, to connect, to wonder? Will you see yourself as an isolated flicker in time, or as a vital spark in the great unfolding story of the cosmos? Because time is not just a river that carries us. It is a canvas we paint upon. Every decision we make, every invention, every act of kindness, every injustice tolerated or challenged is a brushstroke. And when future generations look back, long after we are gone, they will not see us as individuals. They will see us as a collective painting. The question is, what picture are we painting together? Here lies the paradox of fragility and strength. We are fragile. A single asteroid, a supervolcano, or a runaway climate could end our story tomorrow. And yet, we are strong. We have the ability to predict, to adapt, to prepare. No other species on Earth has ever looked to the skies, calculated the orbit of asteroids, and devised ways to deflect them. No other species has built global networks to detect earthquakes, monitor pandemics, or model climate systems. We are fragile, yes, but we are fragile together. And together, fragility can become resilience. This is why perspective matters so deeply. Because when you zoom out far enough, when you imagine standing just beyond the edge of the universe, looking back at all of time and space, the divisions we cling to shrink into absurdity. Do you really think the universe cares about the color of your skin? Do you really think galaxies pause their rotation to consider your bank account? Do you think quasars care what language you speak? Or what side of an invisible line you were born on? The cosmos tells us again and again, those distinctions are ours, not nature's. And yet, here is the tragedy. Knowing this does not guarantee we will act on it. Knowledge is not the same as wisdom. We know more about the structure of the universe than any generation before us, and yet we still struggle to structure societies that value every human life equally. We have decoded the human genome, and yet we still struggle to honor the humanity of those who look or think differently. We can measure the curvature of space-time itself, and yet We stumble over the simplest moral truth that kindness is not weakness, that cooperation is not naivety, that justice is not optional. So, what if seeing beyond the edge of the universe is not about discovering new galaxies, but about discovering new ways to be human? Because here's the irony that unites science and philosophy. The universe is already bigger than our imagination. Always has been, always will be. The real edge is not out there. It's in here within us. And until we expand that edge, no telescope will save us, no rocket will carry us, no theory will redeem us. The stars are waiting, the universe is waiting. The question is, are we ready to grow into it? The space race was born from rivalry. At the height of the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union faced each other in a standoff so dangerous that the survival of the world seemed perpetually at risk. Both nations built arsenals capable of ending civilization in minutes. Fear was the currency of the age, suspicion its language. And yet, out of that fear was born a dream, the dream of reaching space, not as a gift to humanity, but as a demonstration of superiority. And yet, here is the astonishing twist. What began as a contest of nations became a triumph for humankind. When Yuri Gagarin orbited the Earth, the first human to leave the cradle of our planet, he did not simply represent the Soviet Union. He represented all of us. When Apollo 11 touched down on the lunar surface and Neil Armstrong took that small step, it was not merely an American footprint pressed into dust. It was the footprint of the species itself. Consider this. The moon is 384,000 kilometers away. In the scale of the universe, it is right next door. And yet, in 1969, it might as well have been infinity. For the first time, a species that had once huddled in caves, fearing the dark, stood on another world. And Armstrong's words, deliberate, careful, imperfectly transmitted, were heard around the globe. For all mankind, that phrase mattered. It reminded us that when we reach outward, we carry with us not passports, not flags, but the shared destiny of a fragile planet. But here's the part of the story often overlooked. The Apollo program was not just about rockets and astronauts. It was about perspective. The most important photograph ever taken, the Earthrise image from Apollo 8, was not of astronauts or spacecraft. It was of Earth itself, rising above the lunar horizon, a blue marble suspended in darkness. No borders, no nations, just one world. That image sparked the modern environmental movement. For the first time, humanity could see its home in its entirety finite, delicate, alone in the void. And suddenly, questions of pollution, conservation, and sustainability were not abstract. They were immediate. The overview effect experienced by astronauts had been shared with the world. And yet, more than half a century later, we face a paradox as urgent as any black hole. We now know more about our planet than ever before. We can measure the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere with precision. We can track the retreat of glaciers, the rise of sea levels, the warming of oceans. The evidence is overwhelming, and yet we continue to behave as though we are blind. This is the defining test of our century. Will we act on the knowledge we have, or will we let short-term interests dictate the fate of generations unborn? Will we see beyond the edge of the present moment, beyond the edge of profit and politics, to recognize that the stability of Earth's climate is not negotiable? Because here's the truth. The climate crisis is not just about science. It is about imagination. It is about whether we can picture a future where we live in harmony with the only planet we know. It is about whether we can see past the illusions of infinite growth on a finite world. It is about whether we can finally accept that humanity is not separate from Earth. We are Earth, conscious of itself. And once again, the universe offers perspective. In our galaxy alone, there are an estimated 300 million habitable planets, hundreds of millions of worlds where conditions might allow life as we know it. And yet, as far as we can tell, not one of them is confirmed to host civilization. Not one of them has sent us a signal, built a telescope, or left a trace we can detect. The silence of the cosmos is deafening. Perhaps intelligent life is exceedingly rare. Perhaps civilizations emerge, flourish briefly, and then collapse under the weight of their own short-sightedness. Which raises a haunting question: will we join that silence? Or will we be the exception, the civilization that learns to see beyond the edge of its own self-destruction? Because here is what the space race teaches us. When humanity sets its sights beyond rivalry, beyond fear, it is capable of the extraordinary. The same engineering genius that built nuclear weapons built the Saturn V rocket. The same drive for competition gave us the collaboration of the International Space Station astronauts from rival nations working side by side, orbiting Earth in peace while their governments argue below. So imagine for a moment if we applied that same spirit not just to space, but to Earth itself. Imagine if we treated the climate crisis with the urgency of a moon mission. Imagine if eradicating poverty, ensuring clean water, or curing diseases were treated as Apollo-level challenges worthy of the same collective effort. Imagine if the same ingenuity that placed footprints on the moon were directed toward leaving fewer scars on Earth. Because here's the ultimate irony. We dream of colonizing Mars, of building cities under domes, of terraforming a barren desert world, while we neglect the living paradise already beneath our feet. Earth does not need us to survive. But we need Earth, and if we cannot care for this planet, what right do we have to imagine ourselves caretakers of another? To see beyond the edge of the universe is to recognize this truth. Our destiny is not predetermined. It is a choice. We can choose rivalry, short-sightedness, and collapse. Or we can choose vision, cooperation, and survival. The edge of the universe is not just a place in space. It is a mirror, reflecting back the question, will you step forward into maturity or retreat into oblivion? And so I return to you not as individuals, but as citizens of Earth, as members of a cosmic community still in its infancy. The universe has given us life. The question is, will we give ourselves a future? The space race was born from rivalry. At the height of the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union faced each other in a standoff so dangerous that the survival of the world seemed perpetually at risk. Both nations built arsenals capable of ending civilization in minutes. Fear was the currency of the age, suspicion its language, and yet, out of that fear was born a dream. The dream of reaching space, not as a gift to humanity, but as a demonstration of superiority. And yet, here is the astonishing twist. What began as a contest of nations became a triumph for humankind. When Yuri Gagarin orbited the Earth, the first human to leave the cradle of our planet, he did not simply represent the Soviet Union, he represented all of us. When Apollo 11 touched down on the lunar surface, and Neil Armstrong took that small step, it was not merely an American footprint pressed into dust. It was the footprint of the species itself. Consider this. The moon is 384,000 kilometers away. In the scale of the universe, it is right next door. And yet, in 1969, it might as well have been infinity. For the first time, a species that had once huddled in caves, fearing the dark, stood on another world. And Armstrong's words, deliberate, careful, imperfectly transmitted, were heard around the globe for all mankind. That phrase mattered. It reminded us that when we reach outward, we carry with us not passports, not flags, but the shared destiny of a fragile planet. But here's the part of the story often overlooked. The Apollo program was not just about rockets and astronauts. It was about perspective. The most important photograph ever taken, the Earthrise image from Apollo 8, was not of astronauts or spacecraft. It was of Earth itself, rising above the lunar horizon. A blue marble suspended in darkness. No borders, no nations, just one world. That image sparked the modern environmental movement. For the first time, humanity could see its home in its entirety finite, delicate, alone in the void. And suddenly, questions of pollution, conservation, and sustainability were not abstract. They were immediate. The overview effect experienced by astronauts had been shared with the world. And yet, more than half a century later, we face a paradox as urgent as any black hole. We now know more about our planet than ever before. We can measure the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere with precision. We can track the retreat of glaciers, the rise of sea levels, the warming of oceans. The evidence is overwhelming, and yet we continue to behave as though we are blind. This is the defining test of our century. Will we act on the knowledge we have, or will we let short-term interests dictate the fate of generations unborn? Will we see beyond the edge of the present moment, beyond the edge of profit and politics, to recognize that the stability of Earth's climate is not negotiable? Because here's the truth. The climate crisis is not just about science. It is about imagination. It is about whether we can picture a future where we live in harmony with the only planet we know. It is about whether we can see past the illusions of infinite growth on a finite world. It is about whether we can finally accept that humanity is not separate from Earth. We are Earth, conscious of itself. And once again, the universe offers perspective. In our galaxy alone, there are an estimated 300 million habitable planets, hundreds of millions of worlds where conditions might allow life as we know it. And yet, as far as we can tell, not one of them is confirmed to host civilization. Not one of them has sent us a signal, built a telescope, or left a trace we can detect. The silence of the cosmos is deafening. Perhaps intelligent life is exceedingly rare. Perhaps civilizations emerge, flourish briefly, and then collapse under the weight of their own short-sightedness. Which raises a haunting question: will we join that silence? Or will we be the exception, the civilization that learns to see beyond the edge of its own self-destruction? Because here is what the space race teaches us. When humanity sets its sights beyond rivalry, beyond fear, it is capable of the extraordinary. The same engineering genius that built nuclear weapons built the Saturn V rocket. The same drive for competition gave us the collaboration of the International Space Station astronauts from rival nations working side by side, orbiting Earth in peace while their governments argue below. So imagine for a moment if we applied that same spirit not just to space, but to Earth itself. Imagine if we treated the climate crisis with the urgency of a moon mission. Imagine if eradicating poverty, ensuring clean water, or curing diseases were treated as Apollo-level challenges, worthy of the same collective effort. Imagine if the same ingenuity that placed footprints on the moon were directed toward leaving fewer scars on Earth. Because here's the ultimate irony. We dream of colonizing Mars, of building cities under domes, of terraforming a barren desert world, while we neglect the living paradise already beneath our feet. Earth does not need us to survive, but we need Earth. And if we cannot care for this planet, what right do we have to imagine ourselves caretakers of another? To see beyond the edge of the universe is to recognize this truth. Our destiny is not predetermined. It is a choice. We can choose rivalry, short-sightedness, and collapse. Or we can choose vision, cooperation, and survival. The edge of the universe is not just a place in space. It is a mirror, reflecting back the question: will you step forward into maturity or retreat into oblivion? And so I return to you not as individuals, but as citizens of Earth, as members of a cosmic community still in its infancy. The universe has given us life. The question is, will we give ourselves a future? Would you like me to continue into the next section, where we widen the lens to the silence of the cosmos, the Fermi paradox, and the question of whether we are alone building momentum toward the finale, about our shared responsibility to be the voice of the universe itself? Absolutely, let's push forward and widen the lens. We'll take the listener deeper into the Fermi paradox, the silence of the cosmos, and the question of whether we are alone, using it to build momentum toward the grand finale, about humanity's responsibility as the voice of the universe. And so we arrive at the edge of our story. We began with a paradox, the brilliance of human invention set against the persistence of human suffering. We traveled through time and space, through stars and black holes, through triumphs and tragedies, through silence and possibility. And now, Standing at this horizon, one truth emerges. The edge of the universe is not out there. It is within us, because every telescope we build, every rocket we launch, every question we ask, ultimately reflects back on the choices we make here on Earth. The cosmos does not owe us a future. It will continue with or without us. Stars will burn, galaxies will spin, black holes will devour, and time will stretch forward long after our names are forgotten. The universe is under no obligation to keep us alive. But here's the extraordinary thing. We are under every obligation to ourselves, to one another, to this planet, to the possibility that we are the only beings in the galaxy who can ponder beauty, who can experience wonder, who can ask questions that stretch across infinity. The space race showed us what happens when humanity dares to dream beyond rivalry. Apollo did not solve poverty or end war, but it gave us a glimpse of what we are capable of when we unite imagination with determination. It reminded us that a species can accomplish the impossible when it chooses to look up instead of down, forward instead of backward, together instead of apart. And that is the choice before us now. To continue seeing the world through the narrow lens of division, or to widen our gaze to the cosmic perspective, to let the silence of the universe terrify us into inaction or inspire us into responsibility, to squander our brief blink of existence, or to use it as the moment when the cosmos, through us, learned to care for itself. So what if we could see beyond the edge of the universe? Perhaps we would realize that there is no beyond. There is only here, only now, only us. This moment is the edge. And how we step across it will define not just the future of our civilization, but the meaning of life in this corner of the cosmos. When the astronauts of Apollo 8 looked back at Earth and saw that blue marble rising above the moon, they did not see borders. They saw home, one world, one family, suspended in the infinite dark. That is still who we are. That is still what we are. Stardust that has learned to wonder. Stardust that has learned to care. Stardust with a choice. So let us choose well. Let us see beyond ourselves. Let us see beyond our fears. Let us see beyond the edge of the universe by recognizing that the greatest frontier has always been within. And when future generations look back at us, let them say, they were the ones who stood at the brink of possibility, who faced the silence of the cosmos, who looked into the abyss of their own destruction and chose instead to endure, to imagine, to build, to connect, to care. Because in the end, the universe does not ask us to be perfect. It asks us to be aware, to be responsible, to be true to the gift of consciousness we've been given. And if we can do that, then perhaps humanity will become not just a fleeting spark in the cosmic dark, but the voice of the universe itself.